Welcome to Truth and Transcendence. You can find all our other episodes on truthandtranscendence.com. Today, I'm delighted to welcome special guest Michael Ostrolenk, who's here today to talk about a lot of things. We're going to start off talking about that makes no sense. And how many times have you felt that in response to something someone's telling you or something you're observing? So we'll come on to that. Michael is an MA and MFT. He's a master coach in resilience, leadership, and elite performance, elite coaching for former special operators, executive leaders, and high achievers, integrating psychological, physiological, and tactical disciplines, and offering a holistic system for peak performance across mind, body, spirit, and relationships. You can find Michael at michaeldostrolenk.com. And Ostrolenk is Ostrolenk. And that link will be in the show notes as well. So, Michael, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Oh, you're very welcome. Been looking forward to this conversation.
Excellent. So, this thing of that makes no sense that you were talking about before, would you like to take us on a sort of a diving back into the past journey, into when you first really connected with that and noticed that that was what was going on?
Yeah, sure. So, hopefully it's a long time in the future, but when I have my gravestone, it's going to say two things at least. That makes no sense, and yes, and I can talk about the yes and another time, but that makes no sense is kind of a driving question that I've had. Probably fell out of the womb with a question, but the first time I remember actually like having that in my mind when I was 5. And, I happened to be in the hospital at the time. I was diagnosed with an autoimmune disorder, and at the time, this is 1975, the CNAs, the nursing aides, they come by, they feed you and bathe you and all that kind of good stuff, but they play cards with you. So, like, I got to sit down, I was playing cards with 2 CNAs, and one of them I caught cheating, which is very strange. I was, like, 5 years old. Why would you cheat on the game of guards with a kid? And I called him out on it because I'm 5, I don't know any better, and so it's like, "Why are you cheating?" I just and he denied cheating, and he called me a racist. He happened to be an African American man, and it made no sense to me. Like, that I'm like, "What's your race have to do with me catching you cheating?" Like, I just didn't understand, ultimately, deflection, like, because he didn't wanna take responsibility for me catching him, so he called me a name. But, like, that was the beginning for me of, like, these humans are very strange creatures, in part including myself, and they make no sense with what they do. So, it led me to 2 different things. One is to try to understand why we do what we do as humans. Became a psychologist, therapist, and that's, kind of understand the psychological dimensions of that. But also, what's possible if we did something differently? And I was very interested in exploring these other models of ways we could show up in the world and do our lives that are different than the ones that had me questioning why are we doing why that makes no sense. So that was the first of many times, especially in my youth, where I'd say that makes no sense. I have to understand these humans. Why do they do what they do?
Amazing. I can completely picture the scene. And I remember when I was very, very young, having thoughts like that as well, thinking, what on earth are they doing? What
Yeah,
are they thinking?
yeah.
What you would do? How did the other people playing cards with you? By the way, what is a CNA?
Certified nursing assistant.
Okay.
Here in the States, you have the doctor, you have the nurse, you have the CNA. And if you're in a hospital, the CNAs are the ones who most likely feed you, bathe you, take you to the bathroom, in this case, played cards with you, entertained you. I was a little, yeah.
Yeah. So, bizarre situation that they would be someone would be cheating, playing against a kid, and as of
Yeah.
course he was cheating to try and let you win.
I wish. No, I wish. No, he was not cheating to let me win.
That's just
Which,
very surreal.
which actually would be a nice thing for a little kid to make them feel better, especially they think they're dying in the hospital. That's a nice thing. But
Yeah.
this is he was cheating to because he wanted to win, not because he was trying to be nice to me.
So the other people playing cards, how did they respond when you called him out?
Is another woman, and to be honest with you, I do not recall her reaction to me and him and engaging in that conversation. I just remember me being like, literally, this makes no sense. Like, I'm 5. Like, I wasn't racist to begin with. Like, I'm 5. What do I know about race? It's silly. But, like, yeah, I don't, to be honest, like I said, I just don't remember her reaction to the whole
Fair enough.
story.
So what was memorable was the behavior that was just bizarre. That the
Yeah.
odd behavior was what really stuck with you
Yeah.
in that moment. So then as you went through life,
Yeah.
were there any other interesting sort of instances as you went through, your childhood and adolescence and everything?
That makes no sense.
Mm.
I'll give you a couple others. So, let's see, that was when I was in the hospital. When I was still in the hospital, age 5, 1975, I had IVs. They're giving me medication through my IVs. And this is going to sound crazy, especially for a 5-year-old, but I seemingly had an intuitive hit that this was not the right treatment for me. So instead of saying out loud, this makes no sense, I'd literally rip off the IV. Get in trouble, they put it back on, I rip it off. And there are a couple other examples of that when I was a kid in the medical system where whatever they were doing to me didn't make sense. I refused to do it, but I'm a kid, so I always got in trouble. But that's another example of me saying, like, this doesn't feel intuitively right. It makes no sense to me. I'm dealing with this, but you're giving me this medication, and I'm 5. Ultimately, what do I know? Except there's something in me that just keeps challenging authority.
Yeah.
And I can give you other examples, like they're very similar, like either in school where I challenge the dominant paradigm in the teacher, or in the medical system, where I challenge the dominant paradigm in the doctor or the other medical practitioner.
Yeah.
That was a
It
long
was
history.
amazing that you had that intuitive sense, and you were connected to it. Do you see any kind of roots for that in your upbringing and your parents or anything?
Um, no. And in fact, the kind of joke in my family, my mom would always say to me, I was brought in by the stork. Like I was from somewhere else. Now I look like my father. There's no way I can get away from being like biologically connected to my family. But if you ask them, I'm like a alien being inside the family unit. Because a lot of things that I was interested in, a lot of things that I did do made no sense in the context of my family life. Yeah.
Oh, so they're going, "This makes no sense. This entire person makes no sense."
Exactly. Exactly.
And you're going,
Yeah.
"Back at you."
Exactly.
What you
Exactly.
just said made
I make more sense to me than you all make sense to me.
I love it. So,
Yeah.
was this an easy thing to have? This makes no sense kind of intuition. Was it an easy thing for you as a child and adolescent growing up, or did it create challenges?
Oh, it always created challenges, and I'll give you 2 more examples. I wrote a paper in ninth grade, and, um, kind of, what's, I was gonna say Benny Hill because he's English, but, what's the, Life of Brian? Who wrote the Life of Brian? Monty Python.
Yeah.
So I was a Monty Python fan, so I wrote a paper in ninth grade for class. It was very Monty Python, it was very funny, and unfortunately, my teacher is a born again Christian, and she took offense to everything that I wrote. She gave me a 0. Called my parents in, my mom came in, read what I wrote, and she's like, "It's funny. Maybe it's a little bit inappropriate, but it's not 0 worth. Like, the grammar was good, spelling was good, the storyline was good. Like, you need to change his grade." And she fought, like, my mom fought for me the whole time and got my grade changed. But to me, I'm like, this makes no sense. Like, I did the assignment, I did it well, people like it, and just because you have a different particular religious belief, which is fine, like, you have your belief, but why should your belief force me to do a thing a certain way? And I'll give you another fun example. Um, I For geometry, we had to do proofs. Do you remember proofs in
I
geometry?
do.
So, I was able to do them in my head, but I couldn't do them on paper. And my teacher always say, "You're cheating, you're cheating, you're cheating." And I'd say, like, "I'm not cheating. Watch me. Here's the answer. I just can't, I don't know how to do it on paper. Blah, blah, blah. Here's the answer." So I had to go see a tutor to learn how to do it the right way. Now, in my mind, it's like, I can do it without doing the writing it all out. That's pretty effing amazing. But let's highlight that and celebrate that. But forcing me to go do it your way because your way is the right way is really annoying and doesn't make no sense. I had to go see it, literally spend a lot of my time with my tutor to learn how to do it the right way. Okay. What was interesting about her is she was also born again Christian. I happen to be Jewish. And we spent the first half of the session, she was teaching me geometry so I could do the right thing the right way. And then she tried to convert me the second half. And I never told my parents because I loved the conversation. Like, I'd literally, between sessions, I'd think about questions I want to ask her about her belief and why she believes what she does and why it's so important for her to save my soul and have me find Jesus and within her system of thought. And I loved it. But for me, it was like, this makes no sense. Okay, I need to make sense of this. Why do we have to do it this way? And like, let me get curious and try to understand, not just be like, oh, I'm not, leave me alone. Like, no, no, I have to participate in the system as most of the time. Let me try to understand, try to make sense of this thing. And so like, that's another example of me like, this makes no sense, but okay, I'll try to figure it out.
I love that response to "This makes no sense," which is, "This makes no sense, so I'm gonna do my best to understand it," instead
Right.
of, "This makes no sense, so I'm never gonna speak to you again."
Yeah, it's not my MO. And I'll give you another example. I used to, besides being a therapist and a coach, I spent 20 years doing public policy in the United States. And I used to speak at conferences on a wide variety of topics. And I used to spend time with conservatives and liberals and progressives and libertarians, wide variety of different people. But in this one particular conservative conference I'd go to and talk, it was like probably 90% evangelical Christian, 10% conservative Catholic. And they knew I was Jewish, and they would pray for my soul during meals. And at first, I'm like, "Wow, this is kinda weird. Let me make sense of this." And then I started thinking about it, and I'm like, "I'm not gonna take offense to it, because in their worldview, they love me enough that they want my soul to be saved so I can go to heaven." That's a beautiful thing. Now, do I necessarily believe what they believe in? No, because I'm not Christian, but I'm trying to understand why they do what they do. And instead of taking offense to like, "Oh my God, trying to convert me," I'm like, "That's a really beautiful thing that you're praying for my soul over dinner. Thank you," or lunch, whatever it happened to be. So I attempted to take the more curiosity space as opposed to like,
Yeah. Get
like,
out of my space.
yeah, 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 yeah.
Good for you. I mean, that's very evolved. I must say, I don't think I've always been able to take that particular position myself, when someone's trying to impose their ideology onto me, I've sometimes been more indignant.
Which is fine. No, no judgment on how we do the things. I just
You're not even gonna judge
chose a different
my
path.
indignance and judgmentalness.
Well, because I understand it. Yeah.
Yeah, very, very cool.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, yeah.
how did this then flow through to you ending up, becoming a psychologist and working with people?
So, my private interest was the guided meditation, the guided imagery, the biofeedback, the inner work, all the stuff we talked about earlier. Like when I was age 9, I got introduced to always a private interest. But I grew up in DC, Washington, DC. So all our neighbors work for like the agency, the CIA or the FBI or military contractors. So I was always kind of in that world. And so publicly, I was going to go work for the government. I was going to go intelligence or law enforcement. So after college, I did an interview with the government with a friend of the family. So he'd kind of give me the inside skin. He's like, don't come in now, right out of college. Go get your MBA. This is the 80s. MBA was a thing, or become a lawyer. I'm like, I don't want to be a lawyer, but do the MBA. You can come in at a higher level and you can make more money coming in. Okay. So I started an MBA program and, a 3.6 average or 3.5 average, whatever it was. It wasn't that interesting to me, but it was fine. But in the middle of it, a dear friend of mine since kindergarten was murdered in a bar fight and caused me to have like a dark night of the soul, Jungian sense. And then a month later, one of my professors committed suicide, which is kind of added to it. And in this like really dark space, I'm like, life is too short. What do I really want to do? And I always love like the personal development stuff, human optimization and wellness and performance. I'm like, that's what I want to do. So I dropped out of my MBA program, went west and did all my graduate work in the San Francisco Bay Area, transpersonal psychology and somatic psychology, et cetera, et cetera. So that was the kind of the pivot.
Ah. Did you
Yeah.
spend time at Esalen?
I would have loved to spend time at Esalen. I did a Ayurvedic retreat a block away from Esalen, but I never made it into Esalen. No. Yeah.
I was lucky enough to spend a bit of time there doing some training, 5
Oh,
rhythms
good for you.
advance teacher training. We did some of it there.
Oh, that's
Um,
awesome.
it was a very awesome thing. I remember there was a particularly funny occasion. I was on my way from where I was staying down to Esalen for the course. I needed to pick some stuff up for the for part of what we were doing the next day. And I walked into the shop. They had this shop at this place. It was like sort of motel type place. And it was closed, but the door was open. So I sort of wandered in and started poking around. And someone showed up and said, "What are you doing here?" I said, "I'm sorry. I just need some sort of token for the devotional altar for the sweat lodge at Esalen." And he went, "Come on in."
That's awesome.
I'll never forget that. "Come in,
That's so cool.
sister."
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
No problem.
That's great.
So how did you first connect with the personal growth and self-exploration work in the first place?
Well, it's completely because of my therapist, Mrs. Pat Lawson. Um, you know, um, I was fortunate to my mom found her, and she taught me. She was a biofeedback user. This is 1979, so the technology wasn't as cool
You
as
were a
it is now.
child still, or
As a child, yeah, I was 9 years old, and she hooked me up to the machines, and yeah, for a kid, is really cool because like if I was relaxed, the balloon would rise. If I was stressed out, the balloon would fall. Or electroencephalogram, so you put your fingers in this device, and if you're relaxed, the noise gets really quiet. If you get stressed out, so like I learned immediate biofeedback modifications of my physiological system thanks to her, and she taught me other, like meditation practices and guided imagery practices, got me into the martial arts. So like that was a whole world that opened up thanks to her.
oh, amazing that your parents were able to hook you up with someone amazing like that at
Yeah,
that age.
yeah, got very, very lucky. Yeah,
Wow.
yeah. But
Okay,
that
great. So I can see that then got its hook into you, and then later on, you were trying to follow you were trying to be nice, follow the family path, and then you realized life's too short. So would you pick up the story again from so there you are in California,
yeah.
learning all this stuff. How was that? What was that experience like?
It was great because I went to JFK, John F. Kennedy University, their transpersonal program. And it's, academically rigorous. You have to read and study and, all the kind of good stuff, but it was very experiential. So like you had to do breath work. You had to work with a therapist. You didn't have to do psychedelics, but I was interested in psychedelics. So like, and this is Northern California, San Francisco Bay Area, everything is available that you ever want to do in terms of personal growth and development. So either my professors were second generation, like they studied with the people that you'd find at Esalen, originators of a school of thought, or on occasion I'd have the originators. So it was an amazing place to be. Just the quality of professors and instructors at JFK. And then I did my postgraduate work in somatics or body psychology under Don Johnson at CIS. And once again, like great instructors, very experiential. Like, yeah, we were on the ground moving around for hours upon hours and hours and hours, or authentic movement, those kind of practices, or various yogic breathing practices. Like, it was all part of the curriculum.
Mm.
And then, I also got a chance to study with Dr. Stan Groff.
Oh,
Um, that was amazing. We became friendly, and like he was friends with Ken Wilber. So Dr. Groff would give me Ken Wilber's unpublished books, and I got to read them, which is as a graduate student was like, I'll get to read Ken's book before they even get published. So yeah, it's just a really exciting time for me back in the day.
amazing. I did actually have a guest on before who did some training with Stan Groff doing holotropic breath work.
That's
Um,
awesome.
and now actually does that with people with bipolar diagnosis.
Oh, wow, that's
Dawn
interesting.
Blackwell, his name is.
Okay.
He's amazing guy.
Nice.
Um, yeah, so you're the second person who's been on the show who's mentioned Stan and in that context. Wow, how fantastic to work with those people.
Yeah. No, it was an amazing how I was there for quite a few years because I did my graduate, then my postgraduate work. And then I do all my internships, see all the in California, you have to do 3,000 hours of clinical work. So I got lucky. I worked at a couple of psychiatric places, which I can talk about. I worked at a couple of relationship places. I did some experimental things with mind body medicine in hospitals. Like it was like the best place to be to be on the alternative side of psychology.
Amazing. Well, it sounds so great. Well, good for you. So then, did you then immediately set up your own private practice after that?
Well, so, my wife and I at the time decided to move back to the East Coast to be closer to family. My mom was sick, so it was a real good decision because she passed 3 years later. So I did start a practice and started building it up, and then I shut it down and moved. So I then had to rebuild everything on the East Coast, which is fine because, like I said, I got a couple more years with my mom. And I was really close to my grandmother, and she passed the same year as my mom, so at least I got a couple more years with both of them as well.
Has the work that you've done altered your perspective and your relationship with death and people passing?
So, that's a great question. Early on, I one of the groups I work with was a cancer support community in San Francisco Bay Area, founded by Treya Wilbur, Ken Wilbur's wife, who passed away from cancer. So even early on with my work, I was around death and dying a lot, and extreme states of consciousness because I work in the psychiatric locations too. And at the same time, my wife at the time was diagnosed with lupus. And that was a 10-year odyssey, of like every alternative and conventional and anything in between interventions we could do. But one of the things that I discovered in the process is that I couldn't be there as much as I needed to be for her and also work with extreme states. This is way too much for me. So after a while, I'm like, this is kind of a gross way of saying it, but I was like, I need to work with everyday neurotics. Like, death and dying, I just can't deal with because, she could literally die from lupus and I can't spend all day with people who are dying and then be with her at night. Um, and some of the extreme states, because I would do like 15 and 25-hour shifts with, schizophrenic folks. And I feel bad for them. You pick up a lot of that energy. You don't sleep for 24-hour or 25-hour shift. You have that energy inside of you. And then I had to go home and, be with my wife and try to, take care of her as best as I could. So for the longest time, I'm like, I need to shut my practice, not shut it down, focus on everyday neurotics. Like it's a kind of a nice, not
I
a
know what you
nice,
mean, yes.
you know,
You don't want to be
well,
taken off on a kind of a trip by people that
yeah,
you then have to integrate and recover from.
yeah, especially since I was up most nights trying to take care of her, and
Yeah.
stuff like that, which is my responsibility as a husband. So that part of my life kind of came to an end, more neurotic folks. But, I would say, losing my mom, I lost my mom to suicide, um, was, well, I mean, really painful, really eye opening, but also kind of gave me a lot more compassion and empathy for people who are choosing a pain patient. They're dealing with extreme amounts of physical, let alone mental and emotional pain. So even when I started doing some work with veterans with like PTS and TBI who had been suicidal, unfortunately unsuccessful in many cases or all cases that I'm working with. But because of the early experiences and the experiences of my mom, it probably gave me more empathy and understanding to kind of hold a space for people going through something similar for different reasons, but something similar. Yeah.
I kind of was
Mhm.
picking up on that. I think the question came from kind of picking up on something because you'd said that the thing that triggered you leaving the MBA and going to California was these two deaths happening close together,
Right.
and off you went. And then, the whole altered state work is
Mhm.
kind of adjacent to the pre-death work, isn't it?
It's very much so. Yeah.
So I was kind of sensing that you had a sensitivity to that and a kind of a I'm just imagining that, that for a family or for people who are dealing with um, death adjacent issues, I could imagine you'd be a very sensitive person to work with.
Yeah. That's interesting because we're just talking about death, and yeah, you brought some things together in my mind, so I appreciate that. That's good. Um, yeah, but like I said, hopefully the deaths in my experience going through them gave me a compassion for others, whether they're going through it themselves as the patient or they're their caregiver. Because having been a caregiver for a wife with lupus for 10 years, I learned a lot, including like I got to take better care of myself if I can, so I can take better care of her. And that was my cutting edge. Like, oh, I'm a guy. I can push through these things. I can just do the thing. And that led to a lot of burnout and my own challenges physically and mentally and emotionally, especially after she started recovering. Because then I could exhale and go, oh, and then feel all my stuff.
I'm glad she did recover. I was always thinking, "Well, do I ask if she passed or not, or did she recover?" So,
Thank God, she recovered. She ended up going to grad school, getting her master's in integrative medicine, creating a nice little career for herself. She remarried. She has a daughter. Um, I heard from her not too long ago, and she unfortunately had a not recidivism. That's when you go back to prison.
I mean,
Uh,
a relapse.
thank you, a relapse. But it's probably like 14 years of being okay and healthy, which sucks that she had a relapse, of course. But she had that length of time where she was healthy. Then hopefully she can get back there again. And I do believe when I heard from her that she was taking better care of herself to get back to the place of not having to relapse.
Amazing. Well, I'm happy to hear it.
Yeah, yeah, for her sake, for sure.
So tell us a little bit about your practice now and what you're helping people with.
Okay. So I do a multiple different things. Um, I have a pro. I work with individuals. 70% men, 30% women. The men are men who want to learn self mastery, like learn how to regulate their nervous systems, and create a code of conduct for themselves, and be in touch with their fullness as a human being, which means their feelings, their thoughts, their sensations, but not necessarily have to act on them from a defensive point of view when they're triggered by their partner. So, a lot of like internal management and healthy self expression is the work I do with individuals. The women are interesting, or with men, I should say. The women are interesting. I'm the feminine coach for women. Like I have women coming to me who talk about like they have to wear the masculine mask to survive in the world. They have to carry the cognitive load of everyone, their kids, their husbands, the whole thing. And they're tired and they're exhausted. And they want to get into their feminine and they come to me, which is kind of fun. So 30% of my practice is helping women kind of re-embody themselves, get in touch with their intuition and their felt sense and, their natural energies and stuff like that. And not to get rid of their masculine mask because it's useful as a construct, but like not have to live there. So that's my individual work. I work with couples. I love couples. Um, I co-lead a men's group with a partner, JC Glick. He's a former Army Ranger, 11 combat tours. So we bring in really interesting, like I bring in the therapeutic and he brings in more of the leadership, tactical military experiences. Um, and then I do corporate work. Like I do team building and I help individuals within teams optimize themselves and then develop like a more effective or elite team approaches. Yeah.
Wow, that's great. So you've got a really nice range there, haven't you? From the kind of inner work and then the applied work,
I'm
and the individual and the couple and the team.
I'm very fortunate, and I've created because I've been doing this for 30 years, a very comprehensive human development program, which I apply no matter where I'm at. So, it's physiological, it's psychological, it's social, relational, it's environmental. So even when I'm working with a couple, and I love telling the story because most couples think I'm nuts until they do this process with me. But like, I work with a couple, and they're expecting me to just ask about the relationship, which obviously I do because I need to understand their relationship dynamics. But I ask questions like, "Tell me about your sleep. Tell me about your diet and nutrition, your fitness and movement. Tell me about how you handle stress. Tell me about how you live within the 24-hour day-night cycle, circadian biology." And most couples are like, "What's it have to do with me loving my partner more?" I'm like, "Everything." Because if you're dysregulated physiologically, you can't show up fully for your partner. If you feel like crap, you're not sleeping well, you're not eating well, you're not moving. So like I literally spend a good amount of time helping them dial in their physiology based on the season of their life. They don't have to be like an athlete, but like, eating better for their biological type is important. Moving practices because we're human. We're not meant to sit from the computer. Sleep is the key. Like that's the first thing I help people dial in. You dial all those things in, then let's talk about effective communication and active listening and all the beautiful things I would want to do inside of a relationship with a couple.
Amazing. Good for you. I totally approve.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
I mean, I actually came out of a relationship a few years back, which ended because there was a mismatch in that area of what you might call energetic blueprint.
Oh, say
Like
more.
he was a workaholic
Okay.
and I wasn't. And neither one of us wanted to move towards the other person's mode because we were each I was wedded to no, I want to sleep well at night. I want to be relaxed I want to, and he was like, no, I don't want to do, I just want to keep going. I said, okay, I respect that. I love you. This is not going to work. It just wasn't going to work as a match.
So I love what you just said. I respect you, but this isn't going to work as a match because I find because I work with individuals who are trying to be partnered or just found a new partner or girlfriend, boyfriend, whatever it is, and I try to help them understand that they don't have to judge the other person unless it's a really bad behavior. Just understand, like accept them for who they are. Doesn't mean you have to be with them. You can say, "Oh, we're not a match because we own the same value set. We don't do the same things." That doesn't mean you're a bad person. Just means we're not a good match. Because a lot of people think like, "Oh, I have to make them the bad person," and it's quite possible they do boorish behaviors that you can criticize and that way. But for the most part, people are just being people. They're just doing their things. You can't fix them, change them, help them grow unless they want to, and that's a different conversation. But like, if you can accept the person as they are, see them, the reality of the situation, and then make a determination. Is this right for me? So I love the fact that you're like, I mean, maybe take you a little bit of time to get there, but you're like, I don't have to judge this person as a bad person. We're just not a good fit energetically.
That's
Okay.
right. That's right. And I think it is difficult in relationships sometimes to have those conversations, isn't it? Because
100%.
everyone's been programmed to believe that it's all got to be, unicorns and roses forever. And hitting points where it's difficult is something people think, oh, that shouldn't ever happen. Whereas actually that's a natural part of relating.
The natural part of relationships, I call my relationship work the relationship dojo. It's modeled after martial arts as a metaphor,
Yeah.
along with the martial art training. And I basically say, people train for a marathon or a Tough Mudder or a Spartan race or Ironman, but they don't train for their marriage. And that's probably the most important thing you should do is train for your marriage because we don't know how to be in relationships.
Wouldn't it be
And you
great?
know,
Wouldn't it be
no,
great
look,
if we did train for our relationships?
yeah, and you don't have to do my program, but just the idea of like this is the most important relationship, hopefully, you'll ever have. Like, let's make this work. How do we make this work? Well, we have to build capacity. We have to build inner resources, some certain skills. Fine. You do that if you're running a marathon, you to learn how to run properly and you learn how to hydrate and eat properly for that exercise. Let's do the same for your marriage. Let's get you on the mat, literally, not, literally, and let's train you up to be in this relationship.
Amazing. And
Yeah.
do you ever get people, these are probably quite evolved people who think, I'm not in a relationship at the moment, but I want to train up so that when I am in a relationship, I actually enter into it in the best way. And do people ever come to you for that? Or are you only doing this with people when they're inside a relationship?
No, that's a great question. And I love people who want to develop themselves up to show up differently than they have in the past in a new relationship. And my favorite example is I had a guy I work with who originally I was going to work with as a couple, but literally by the time we had our first session, his wife left him, moved in with her new boyfriend. So like there was no relationship. And I work with him like post divorce. How does he create a life for himself? Forget the dating thing from one moment, but like, started eating well, started exercising. He lost 30 pounds, got in really good shape, was sleeping better. The best compliment I heard through him was his mother-in-law, the mother of his wife who left him, complimented him on how he was showing up for the kids because he's much more relaxed and capable of working, being with his kids as opposed to stressed out, which is beautiful. That's the best thing I could ever hear from anyone. But when he wanted to start dating, we started working on that. Like, okay, how do you want to show up? Who do you want? And how do you want to show up in this relationship differently than you have in the past? How do we we figured out what that looks like and then how do we build those capacities in you so you can make better decisions? So you can show up more honestly, authentically, more openly, but you also attract the kind of woman that you actually want to be in a relationship with. And that was amazing to watch his transformation over time.
Mm. Good for
Yeah.
you.
Yeah, thank you, but good for him.
Yeah.
Like when he first started dating and he shares me some of the stories about the women he would choose, which are so much different than his wife. I don't not to judge his wife. She did what she did, blah, 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 blah. But like women who were showing up for him, not because he could give them something, but because he's a good, decent human being. And they wanted to express that with him. And that was such a different thing for him that at first he didn't know how to handle it because he wasn't used to it. of a non-selfish partner. But then he started liking it. Like, this is really nice to be in a relationship with a woman who actually wants to be with me and is interested in me and asks me questions. And that's just good. Good for him.
Really good. Wonderful. Well, I love the sound of what you're doing. It's been just a fascinating. I'm just having a sip of water. I suddenly,
Take your time.
I was going to just be really smooth there and say the next thing, but no. Um, but this is fascinating what you're doing, and thank you so much for sharing your story of how you got here. Um, some of the people who listen to the show are also out there doing their best to be helpful and being part of the solution in or whatever path they're walking. Is there something you'd like to say to those people in relation to some of what we've been talking about today?
Yeah, so there's always two messages I like to leave. One's on the physiological side. You know, it's important to take good care of yourself physiologically, sleep well, find out the appropriate diet for you, for your bio-individuality, learn how to deal with your stress, understand circadian biology so you can live within a 24-hour day-night cycle, decrease your chances for getting chronic and life-threatening diseases that, we don't want that. Let's optimize your health. So, like, first thing is like, hey, sleep. Like, anyone listen to this, like, dial in your sleep. And if you need more resources on sleep, I recommend Dr. Kirk Parsley. He's a friend of mine, he's a sleep expert. You can find him on YouTube. Great talks on sleep. The second thing, this speaks to what literally the question you just asked, is kindness. Like, we never know what someone else is going through, a stranger, a friend, a colleague, whatever it is. And if you can find any moment just for a short period of time to be kind to another human being, you literally could save a life. I've heard stories of like someone on their way to commit suicide and kindness of a stranger convinced them like there's something to live for. So it doesn't necessarily have to be that extreme, but you could literally just, give someone a reason to stay alive, which is huge, or smile and, recognize that there, despite the challenges of life, there's some good things in life, including other human beings, and it can be paid forward, like, kindness spreads. So get some sleep and be kind.
Wonderful.
Yep.
Well, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
We've talked about quite a lot today, and it's been really, really interesting, fascinating story. And I just want to thank you for following that whole path you followed, because I can see how it's all led to you being the man you are now, helping people in the way that you're able to do now. And I really respect that. Has there been for you a favorite part of our conversation today?
So when you ask me the questions on dying and how it's kind of informed my work, I that's my favorite for me personally. Like, it's going to cause me to have some self-reflection, connecting dots, which of course is my life. They're connected anyways, but don't necessarily solve them. So I'm going to go back and sit down with like, wow, death has really influenced my life. And maybe there's parts of my life it's influenced what I'm not even aware of, the depth of it. And that might be useful for me as a personal exercise in my own growth and development, but also useful because I have blind spots. And if I can explore my own blind spots, and I can help other people explore theirs as well more deeply. So thank you for
Beautiful.
that.
Well,
Yeah.
my pleasure.
Yeah.
I was just picking up a sense that that exposure had probably enhanced your capacities for your work.
Yeah.
Really good. So, yeah. Well, thank you again so much, Michael, for coming on.
I appreciate you. Thanks for
Uh,
having me on.
and I'm just going to remind everybody where to find you, which is michaeldostrolenk.com. Ostrolenk is Ostrolenk, and that will be in the show notes. Um, Everyone, thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Please go to truthandtranscendence.com for all my other episodes. And if you'd like me to help you step deeper into your calling and bring it more to life, then book a clarity call via the show notes. So thanks again, Michael, very much indeed.
Very welcome.